just take another minute. We
I'm
live
not sure.
already?
Are we live?
Made it live already. You just
We
spread
are
live.
live.
It's live. Well, we have
All
been
right.
live.
We are suddenly live. Welcome, everyone, to the Coaching to Flourish podcast. I am your host, Raj Anderson, Executive Life Coach and Coach Assessor. And I am here with John Andrew Williams, who's the founder of Coach Training EDU. And we were just chatting about all things, weren't we, John? How are you?
Did we do the overviews? Are we on the things? Like where we at? It's moving. It's busy.
Lots of exciting things happening, John. What can you share with us?
It's good. I mean, I feel like we have a lot of pieces in place and continue to do the things that need to happen. I want to block this on here a little bit because it is pretty intense. But yeah, no, just we're talking about coaching styles. And I think that's an excellent thing to look at today. What we're doing here. There we go. That's good.
There we go. Okay, so coaching styles, John. I've been going into overviews recently, and some of the coaches have been curious about developing or adapting their coaching style.
Mhm.
What would you share with us around coaching styles?
Yeah, I mean, this idea of style of coaching is interesting because it looks at not only how you, uh, you know, understand the coaching field, but also how you see yourself in the coaching field. And I know that there's an element of when people are getting into coaching, there's a huge learning curve. Like, how am I going to like figure out like what the coaching process is, what it isn't? Am I doing it right? Am I listening level two? Am I doing all the things I need to do? And then once people get there, then it's like, okay, so who am I in this process? How do I bring myself into this? Like, and you combine that with entrepreneurship and the growth curve is so massive. So I mean, I guess that is the overview of how you find both, your understanding of the field and then your understanding of yourself within the field. And that is an understanding of your coaching style.
So, John, how does that differ from, there's loads of things thrown out there, isn't there, when people are looking at their business? The word niche comes up a lot. I've talked about brand before. So, where does coaching style sit if we're thinking about niche or brand as well?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, coaching style is one of those things that comes far down the road. I think that there's an element of, what is your marketing style? How do you communicate with people who are interested in, working with you? I think that has a role in it. To me, coaching style is something that is also designed in, design the alliance with clients where you can ask clients, like, do you want me to be more gentle? Do you want me to be more direct? Like, do you like when with looking at accountability, to what degree do you want me to be active in that? Or how do you want to design like how we work together? In my mind, coaching style is something that you develop. And I think it's also what is really important about a coaching session, because when you're working with clients and they want to know what's it like to work with you, having a strong, sample coaching session gives them an idea of, okay, this is exactly what it's like to work with you. And I think it's just best practice to do one of those. It is best practice to have that when you're doing that kind of work.
Hmm. What would you say your coaching style is, John?
I've been thinking about this too, different words for it. It's kind of like what's your aesthetic? You know what I mean? Like what does that you really look like for you? I think my coaching style, I think back to a couple of my main influences as coaches in my coaching. Laura Whitworth comes to mind right away. She was one of the founders of the ICF. Her style was very pointed, direct, challenging, loving. she had tremendous empathy, but also impatience around like get to it, like where are we at?
Mm.
And I think my style, I mean, I hope I can, have some of that as my style. I think my style also tends to be very spacious. I think I know I spend a lot of time pausing. I'm not afraid to ask prickly questions or go into that space too. Very deep into level two listening, like deep listening. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't yet have a word for it, but I feel like I'm, you know, getting there. Uh, I definitely have a mode that I slip into. And I feel like I'm pretty happy with my where my coaching style is at the moment. Um, yeah, maybe we'll get a word for it by the time we finish this podcast. How about you, Raj? What would you say your coaching style is, or how would you describe your style as a coach?
Um, Definitely mindful. Bringing mindfulness practices into my coaching style. Um, Empathy, holding that space. Yet I'm not afraid either of those prickly questions. I actually love them. So one of the things we talk about when I'm designing an alliance with a client is I say, part of my role is as a coach is going to be perhaps to call you out sometimes. Hold that mirror up. How would you like me to do that? But I bring in humor as well. So I do have, a humorous style in the way I would ask some of those questions. For example, I've joked with somebody before now and said, I'm here to challenge you unless you want to pay me just for being nice, right? Well, what is it that
Ah,
you want from this?
pay me for being nice. That's awesome.
So, and people respond in different ways and they're like, no, this is what I'm looking for, or yeah, I want you to challenge me. And I get different answers. So I am curious about this. We might have our own go-to style, yet you also talked at the beginning of designing the alliance and meeting people where they're at. And I do know I have to be fluid with it. And there are times when perhaps a coaching style that could be a natural style for me isn't going to be a great fit for somebody that I'm working with, maybe because they're new to coaching. Or we have to look at diversity aspects. I know we've got an inclusion program coming soon. So I'm curious around, we might have a go-to coaching style, yet how do we be fluid and flexible when that might not work for someone? What do you think
Mhm.
about that?
Yeah, I think it's important when you're looking at choosing a coach that you're working with over a longer period of time that you try them out. You try out a couple, you try a session, maybe work with them for 3 sessions, figure out like does their does their does their style, the perspectives they have, the kind of questions they have, the assumptions they're making, does that align with you as a client and where you want to go? And I think that that's not always that is sometimes really challenging to communicate right away to clients where it's like, look, this is like, it's something I feel like you experience when you're in a coaching session. You realize, yeah, like for whatever reason, this really clicks for me. And I think it's very challenging to put together on on paper or even to communicate because clients themselves, when they're thinking about working with the coach, all of it's new to them. And I want to be really clear that it's not, I want to make a couple of distinctions around, the stages of, working with coach and client. Like it's one thing, let's say you're in a coach training program and you're working with, one of your colleagues and you're being coached. There's a lot of value that's created in that. And but it's also not like, you're not developing a coach client relationship over a period of time where you're working with the same coach, similar topics, similar goals, and that coach can see the progression through the space. So, I mean, even though, even the coaching sessions themselves, I feel like lend themselves to different styles of coaching. Where let's say you're in a class, that coaching feels like, all right, like casual coaching or one-off coaching, or we'll call it more standard coaching. Whereas I think if you're working with a coach client relationship outside of a class or outside of just one-off sessions, that those coaching sessions can be extremely detailed in the way that you design them with your clients. And so, yeah, so do you like more heat? Do you like more heart? Do you like it when I cheer you on? Do you like to be challenged? Uh, is it useful for me to uh, question a lot of limiting beliefs when I hear them? Or is it useful for me to let those limiting beliefs go for now, look more at action steps? How, like, what's the client's relationship to action steps versus insights? What really gets them moving forward in terms of taking those things that are scariest for them? I mean, as a coach, you get such an understanding of your clients on a deep level. You can really start to design how, like, what really works the best for them. And then, I mean, that process becomes, it's not that coaching style is the coach exuding as much as the coach interacting with, different modes of clienting and the client style. So I think there's a congruence that happens when a coach knows this is who I am. This is how I coach. These are my strengths as a coach. These are the problems that I as a coach solve with this particular target audience. And then a particular target audience says, yes, I have, like, these are the challenges I have. You're the coach I want to work with. This style matches. I mean, when all of those things are green lights, it's amazing. And I think it takes a little bit of time to find that. It really does. And I find a lot of coaches do it once they start getting their practices, they get their feet under them, they start getting referrals, things like that. It is an upward cycle.
Thank you, John. So I'm hearing, really partnering with your client to figure that out. And I'm
Mhm.
curious, you used whether using more heart or heat. And I know, and I know listeners have listened to your demos, you don't shy away from those prickly or sharp questions. Yet often coaches can, right? That direct style can cause some discomfort even after an alliance has been created. So what words of wisdom or what advice would you give coaches on the benefit or the use of the sharp and prickly style?
Yeah, I think benefits of it are, I mean, you can help people go forward pretty quick and you can get to hearts of matter. The downside to it is sometimes it's a little much. It's too intense, and that's okay too. And I've learned to back off a lot. Like, let's say I'm working with a client and it's okay, this isn't going to go there. Then it's like, all right, let me scale it back, way scale it back. And it's like different modes of handwriting. You can have different modes of handwriting. It's okay. Your handwriting doesn't have to be the same in every single circumstance. Like, it's the same with coaching too. You can have different styles that you reach for, you slip into. Uh, and it seems like a really natural thing. I'm curious too, Arjun, because you work with a lot of executives in your space, and I know that there's a certain kind of professionalism that is expected in executive coaching, as well as a humanity. Those aren't mutually exclusive. How do you design with your clients your style of coaching, and at what points in time do you feel like you have to make course corrections?
It's a great question, John. Thank you. I mean, I am naturally pretty structured anyway. My style is structured, and I found that that has worked really well in that executive arena, in the leadership arena, especially sometimes when you don't have a lot of time. So I find that clients really appreciate that style and that clarity, right?
Mhm.
Even right at the outset, So it's me, all right, John, we've got, 30 minutes. I'm going to start with the usual. We'll do our check-in at the beginning and look at the agenda. Some exploration. We'll close off with action. How does that sound? I found even that clarity and that structure when you're dealing with people who are really busy, they appreciate it. They're coming from back-to-back meetings and it's almost like, okay, thank you, there's a reminder and I know what's going to happen in this space. So structure works, I found, works very well. And I'm a structured person, so it's like it's lovely. It's a go-to style for me anyway.
Like more like so would the opposite be like an unstructured, like free flowing. How are you? We're just going to gently ask lots of questions, and they're all lovely questions, but they might not have a strong structure in place.
Yeah. Um, but for me, because I am yin and yang, there is the structure, but I love mindfulness as well. Even within that structure, I find what works really well is kind of creating that illusion of time and space. I always have an eye on the clock, yet the clients have given me feedback that they don't feel like it, or they don't
Mm.
know that I've got my eye is always on the time
Oh, that's
because I
interesting.
want to make it like spacious for them.
Mm.
So yeah, it's like it's the skill then, isn't it, of attempting to be present, keep an eye on the time. There's a structure in there. But what is important for me is when I'm working with someone that they don't feel rushed, even if there's structure there. I'm just being
Right,
there with them.
right, right. Yeah, I think there's I mean I it's funny. I think there's a thing to time. Like who keeps track of time? How is time work? Coaching sessions can often feel expansive. Time stretches. I do not have a consciousness of time when I coach yet. I feel like I've done it so much I can say, oh, it's about 30 minutes or oh, it's about 50 minutes. And then I look up and go, that's about right.
Yeah.
Like you get a sense of arcs in coaching. A lot of new coaches will go overtime too. You ever experienced that in overviews? Like I have an overview, it's an hour, 30 minutes long. Like that's
Yes, all the
amazing.
time.
That's amazing. And I think that one of the marks of more professional coaches, you get in, get out. It's like, all right, you get to the heart of it more quickly, more directly. And once you're there, the insight comes and then the action and then rinse and repeat. Yeah. Step into space.
Do you think there is it's different with different kinds of clients? As I said, I guess I have become that's become a style and part of me because I am dealing with people who like time is so finite. Often we're actually coaching on time itself anyway, right? Which is interesting.
Yep.
Um, but then I have had different types of clients. I've worked with younger people, or perhaps somebody wants to just focus on something spiritual or energetic or being. What are your thoughts? Do you think style changes depending on niche?
Yeah, I think so. For sure. I mean, in bits and pieces. I think that style, when people are thinking about their coaching style, that's usually a pretty strong sign that they have the fundamentals correct. On, in terms of, all right, I know how to ask powerful questions. I know how to listen. I know how to lean into curiosity. I can trust myself, my client in the process. A lot of those things are in place. And I think my thought on style, I know when I lead classes, you're saying like with the overviews, like a lot of people are, when I sub in things like this, people are then talk about styles.
Yeah.
I like talking about style because I think it gives people opportunities to ask themselves, who am I being as a coach and how do I show up? And even as I'm thinking about it now, I'm realizing, yeah, it might not be that we have one style as much as you have a range and you're able to adapt to what your client needs. And it could be instead of asking the question, what is my style or brand of coaching? It's probably more accurate to ask, what is my stylistic range?
Ooh.
And what's the constant in that stylistic range? Like for instance, Laura Whitworth, her constant was the ability to create a safe space where you felt like, all right, whatever she's going to ask me, I'm game. Like I'm here. Like you see all. You know what I mean? It just felt like you were completely transparent, instantly transparent.
Mm.
And okay, within that range, to what degree is it useful for the client to be coached more gently versus we're going for it. What is really stopping you? Really
What
should,
is your stylistic range? Something for us to think about. Um, well, I've got an eye on the time, so we've got
yeah,
like
there we go.
30 seconds. At the beginning of this, you were like, oh, maybe I'll have a name for my coaching style by the end of this. Where are we at with that thought?
I like range, stylistic range. I feel like my range is I feel like it can go pretty wide. Um, and but I think if I had a style, I like to think of it as a deep style of coaching, like deep coaching in the sense of, all right, we're gonna get down to it. Yeah.
Deep style. Okay. What other thoughts would you like to leave us with,
I'm
John?
just curious, your style, if you had a name for yours, Raj, like what would you call your style of coaching?
I think it needs a bit more thought, but maybe like a catalytic transformation. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to just go with transformational. There's something else there.
Mm-hmm.
I need to marinate on it, John, I think.
There it is. There it is. Well, thank you. It's lovely to have you in these weeks. When the weeks you aren't here, I feel like I'm a fish out of water. Like, what are we doing on this podcast? I need to find a way. I'll find a way, but we will. We'll get there.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, John. I'm
Sure.
grateful for your insights, and we've got curious questions to take away. Thank you to everyone who's listening. We've got loads of live events, loads of events happening over the next few weeks for Coach Training EDU. So please check out the Coach Training EDU page, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Yep,
Thanks,
absolutely.
John.
Bye,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.